Carol Beaumont.
Mr Speaker, I join colleagues in rising to speak against the Legal Assistance Sustainability Amendment Bill, and I will comment on some of the points made by the last speaker. I think, given the level of government debt that National inherited when they came into power, that was zero government debt, to say that the previous Labor government had a champagne lifestyle is somewhat ironic, and particularly ironic is these comments about having to make important services sustainable because of tough economic times from a government that cut taxes for the wealthy and has led to blowing out debt problems in this country. I just think that that is absolutely extraordinary that that Speaker can get up there and make those sort of comments without flinching. Honestly, we oppose this bill. We have concerns about the government's overall direction in the justice area. We believe this bill will inhibit access to justice. That is a very real risk with very significant consequences and runs the potential for substantial miscarriage of justice. And my colleagues Carmel Sepuloni and Charles Chevelle have outlined that very carefully, as has the Greens Speaker, Kennedy Graham. This is a government that is actually one that responds to issues in the way that makes them look like they are reacting to particular problems, but it's actually not about substance, it's all about image. So instead of dealing with the reasons why legal costs may be increasing, which probably is because there are more people being charged with crimes, and what is underlying that, this is a government that says, well, the costs are blowing out, so we need to be seen to be doing something, so we're going to cut access to legal services. Well, that just is unbelievable. There are other alternatives, and I want to touch on some of those. But first and foremost, can I say that we should all in this House be concerned about accessible justice systems, that every citizen of this country has the right to fair legal representation, to defend themselves, to ensure that they are not unjustly convicted or unjustly imprisoned. And that should be something each and every member of this House is committed to. And concerns about tensions with the Bill of Rights, which Kennedy Graham outlined, are very serious matters, which again every member of this House should be worried about. Essentially, this bill will introduce higher levels of means testing and limit what can be covered by legal services. This will go to the Justice and Electoral Select Committee if it is passed, and there are a number of parties saying they're voting against it, but if it is passed, it will go to the Select Committee that I am on, and certainly along with my colleagues we will be scrutinising this very carefully and encouraging people to make submissions on this bill because there are some very serious risks with it. In Power Labor introduced a new repayment and debt management scheme, which is where the focus on sustainability for legal aid should be. It should be on making sure that it is where we can manage the repayment and debt management so that it is sustainable rather than penalising low and modest income people who genuinely need a lawyer so they can access legal representation. It is a fundamental part of our justice system that people have the right to representation. Now, I want to talk about the public defence system in a minute as well, because that was something that was initiated under Labor and is being used by the Minister to justify some of the changes here. And we are very concerned that this is being done in a way that is not transparent, that is not evidence-based and is not looking at the real costs. Because at the heart of the reform, so-called reform that we're talking about here, is the proposal to ramp up the public defence service, to take up over 50% of criminal legal aid cases in Auckland, Hamilton and Wellington, and later extending to Tauranga, Hastings, Dunedin and Christchurch. Now, as I said, that was a scheme that was initiated by Labor, so it's not that we don't support the public defence system, but we do believe in a balanced system, and that must continue to include access to legal aid and legal assistance from private lawyers as well as the public defence system. It needs to have that checks and balance in the system. We are concerned that this is being looked at, the public defence system, as a cheaper system that will be a way of managing costs, but in fact nothing could be further from the truth. What it seems like, in looking at the figures from the Legal Services Agency annual review, is that in fact the average cost of a case under the Public Defence Service is $1,612, whereas the average legal aid bill per case from a private practice lawyer over the same period was $1,343. In other words, the Public Defence Service costs $269 more per case than a private sector lawyer. So we support funding the public defence system, as well as resourcing private sector lawyers and bodies like community law centres adequately. If the right balance is struck between each of these, they can provide a useful check against each other in terms of both cost but also of quality. We need to ensure that everybody, irrespective of their income, has access to fair representation, good quality legal representation, to ensure that they are not unjustly prosecuted, that they are not unjustly convicted, that they are not unjustly imprisoned. So it is really important to get this right. And certainly there was reference earlier to England and Wales, and one of the members' opposite scoffed at that and said, well, we're in New Zealand. But actually evidence-based lawmaking would warrant us looking at what is happening in similar jurisdictions with similar services. And the latest review of the Public Defence Service in England and Wales shows that the Minister's solution, that's Minister Simon Power's solution, a vastly expanded public defence service, will cost the taxpayer considerably more than it does currently. So there needs to be proper transparency around the costs of the public defence service, which is what we are seeing muddled here. Now, I also think that I agree with Charles Chauvel when he said that this is being presented in very comforting terms about maintaining access to services and balance and all of that, and I've heard that from members opposite. He listed a number of very serious offences that would be beyond assistance for offenders earning more than $22,000. Now, nobody in this House could argue that that is a substantial income. That is an absolutely pitiful level of income that would be very difficult to afford legal assistance. Some of the examples he gave were various assault cases, offensive weapons cases, concealing dead babies, very serious offences actually. He also talked, and I thought this was really important to repeat really, that this potentially sees children missing out on representation, because it is requiring those parents in the cases to be contributing to the cost of independent legal representation for children. Well, we all know, sadly, that in many cases when children get in the middle of legal disputes, that sometimes adults actually are not doing the best thing for children. And children, for Labor, are at the centre of what we are doing. We must get it right for our children, and that includes ensuring that all children have independent legal representation irrespective of the income of their parents. I think other things that worry me in this bill are the ability to further change and restrict by regulation, and that's outlined there about placing additional civil matters on the schedule, and also removing the requirement to index means thresholds, so that in fact they will over time become even lower, if you like. So in conclusion, I would say that we believe in justice and opportunity for all. We think that it is important to get a balanced package here, whereas this is a short-term response being seen to be doing something in the same way that this government has reacted to things like industry training, being seen to do something rather than to deal with the real issues. It's like loan sharks. Again, 3 months out from the election, suddenly the government needs to be seen to be doing something. A short-term response, having done nothing of substance. And I think there are some very serious matters here. I again repeat the concern about tensions with the Bill of Rights, and I would say that the consequences are important, and I want to acknowledge Rahui Katane for raising the issue about consequences potentially for Māori of this going wrong, that this limiting people's right to justice. I recently visited Arohata Prison and was absolutely appalled and shocked to find out that 84% of the women in Arohata are Māori. There's something wrong in our justice system, and making it hard for people to get good representation will make that worse. We need to be serious about dealing with the causes of crime and dealing with issues like poverty and jobs and training.